Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Perspective, a show where we tackle paranormal and supernatural claims, belief in aliens, conspiracy theories, and pretty much any claim you want to give us. My name's Ethan. Your hosts for the evening are Genevieve and Bree. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Doing all right. Happy to be back on the Perspective again. This is my second time since our hiatus, and I'm just loving being back taking these calls with you, Ethan.
Well, I appreciate both of you kind of filling in last minute and taking over. It's much appreciated. But what I will do is I will get out of here and I will bring on your first caller, which is Laura, a theist from Ohio, and wants to talk about why she believes in God. Laura, you're on with Genevieve and BrainBug.
Hello.
Hey, Laura. How's it going?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
Doing all right tonight. Glad you're able to take some time to call us and talk to us about what you got going on. So what do you want to break down for us about God?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know if I'm actually a Christian or what you would call me. Because I mean, I believe in God, but I love the paranormal.
Well, let's break down what you believe in a little bit and see. Maybe we can kind of get a framework.
Yeah. And just to add on that, I would be curious to see why you think those things are mutually exclusive. But yeah, please.
All right. So do you believe in a creator deity that created the universe?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I pretty much just believe there is a God, and he loves us and helps us. And
is it the God of Abraham
all
from
that.
the Bible and other related histories? The Christian God.
I guess pretty much.
Was
Yeah, I just don't.
In your worldview, was Jesus a thing, or was it that just kind of?
Yeah, I believe in Jesus.
Okay, so Jesus. Okay, so you're Christian then. I would say you're a Christian. What kind of Christian? I mean, that's for you to decide or you to tell us. I'm not going to narrow you into a box any more than that. But so let's talk about the God of the Bible then, because that sounds like that's probably the direction you're going with. So are we going biblical literalism? I mean, 6-day creation, Adam and Eve, Noah's Ark, all the literal stuff. Or are we going more? That's figurative and allegorical. It's allegorical. Okay. Good. So
I pretty much believe in the Bible. I used to read the Bible all the time. I haven't in years, but I believe in everything it says. And a lot of reasons why is because of when they found proof. Like they actually found some of the original Bible.
The Dead Sea Scrolls.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
they are old.
You
know what's interesting about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Just real quick, sorry about a little tangent, but it's just because it's one of my favorite things to talk about. Is that parts of the book Enoch are in there? Mm-hmm. Isn't that wild that the oldest version of the Bible includes Enoch and no? I shouldn't say no because there are some that do. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church still uses Enoch, but most Christian theologies do not include Enoch in their library.
No.
So, is it the Dead Sea Scrolls that you find compelling? There are other mythologies that kind of predate the Dead Sea Scrolls. I mean, temporally anyway. I don't.
Right.
Yeah. So let us tell us kind of what you think was going on with the deity and how that works. So you're talking like the Bible. So I mean, let's unpack that. What parts of the Bible compel you to believe that there is a creator God?
You pretty much just know. You have that sense, and you know.
Like an intuition.
You know he's real. You know yeah. I mean, you read the Bible and stuff, and I don't know how else to describe it. You just know, you have that feeling, and you know.
Okay.
If that
Were
makes any sense.
yeah. Were you raised Christian? Were you raised going to church and reading the Bible? When did you first really consider yourself a Christian?
Yeah, I grew up in and out of church. I mean, yeah, I grew up in and out of church, and I got saved when I was 16,
Mm-hmm.
and I
Are you born again? Is that
got baptized twice. Yeah,
okay?
pretty much born again,
So,
and
so you're a Protestant then? I'm guessing the churches you went to were Protestant churches. Were they in the what part of the country are you in? You don't have to tell us your location exactly, but just an idea what kind of culture did you grow up in?
well, I'm from Ohio.
Ohio. Okay.
And I live in Worcester, Ohio. There's this little tiny town called Fredericksburg, Ohio, where I grew up.
Yeah.
And
one of those little towns with a church on every corner, I bet. I grew up in a town like that.
Pretty much around here, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have exposure to a lot of other?
I also grew up around Amish.
Yeah. Amish. Yeah. So what do you think of their ideas on the Bible? Because they use the same book and they have some different ideas about what it tells us to do.
Right. Yeah, they don't have electricity and drive buggies and all that. So
yeah, and all that is they glean all that from the pages of the Bible, from the same book that you're reading. They get this message that tells them that they're supposed to live this more primitive lifestyle. And I don't mean that in an insulting way, just without the fineries of the modern world, we should say. And that they get that from the Bible, from the pages of the Bible and the teachings of Jesus. It's kind of wild how some people can read it and interpret that. And then you got the other end of the spectrum, you got the Catholics with their big hierarchy and kind of a monolith of a church. This whole spectrum of people all using the same book with teachings across the spectrum. So in that, when you take that scenario into thought, how do you come to where you fall on that spectrum? How do you decide this is the actual right interpretation?
I never gave that much thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to sit down and think about that.
I mean, because you got to think: are the Mennonites right? Are the Catholics right? Are the Mormons right? There's so many people that have so many different ideas about what this book is telling us that it's hard to say which church and which denomination, whose interpretation of these words that have been translated and retranslated from one language to another language to another language, and then revamped by the Church of England with pieces of that book that had come down from that descent, plus going back to when it was earlier interpreted into the Greek. So you got this book that's been revamped over and over again. Has I think the Bible is still the top selling book, right, Genevieve?
I believe so.
So I mean, I think they said Harry Potter gave it a run for its money there for a minute, but so we have all these different versions, different denominations. How do you pick one?
I actually, I thought about doing my own church, and even coming up with my own religion.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay.
So what kind of church would you have? Would it be a more progressive kind of church with welcome the LGBTQ people and all that? Is that the kind of church you'd like to run? Maybe something a little more progressive, or are you more conservative?
I know somebody that got kicked out of a church because they were involved in paranormal and stuff like that. And I really took that story to heart. And I'm like,
that's wild because there's a lot of
a church to
there's a lot
Yeah.
of churches that are involved in the paranormal and do that kind of stuff. Do calling spirits and exorcisms and all this. So it's nitpicking the beliefs though. Genevieve, you look at a thought on your tongue right before I steamrolled you, so go ahead.
No, you're fine. I think you're totally right when it comes to the church being closely intertwined with the paranormal. Because I mean, what is a great exorcist movie without a priest in there to get vomited on? But I have a couple trains of thoughts for you, and I'm very curious about what happened when you were 16, because you said that's sort of when you were saved, and so you were raised in going to church in and out kind of loosely, but did something happen like when you were 15, 16 years old that made you really think like, oh, I need to take my relationship with Jesus really seriously. I'm going to officially become baptized in his name. Hallelujah, amen, etc.
Yeah, that was just one of the best times that I've ever had. Is I grew up with my best friend, one of my best friends, and her family, and they all went to this little tiny church. It was called Holmesville Baptist Church, and I just loved it. And just through with them, they're the reasons why that I got saved and started being serious about God. And
Yeah, they
I'm
really
so
just
glad that they.
yeah.
So do you pull a lot of the
I'm
paranormal
thankful
stuff
for
from the
them every
Bible?
day.
Cool.
What's that?
Do you pull a lot of your paranormal ideas from the Bible?
I believe there's stuff in the Bible, and
Yeah, it's just someone
yeah,
on our side
and
chat here mentioned the Bible has many stories that include the paranormal. I wanted just to kind of get your thoughts on it.
yeah, I was always told about the story too about who was it that that is, what was the verses in the chapter where they were talking about they think they saw aliens and UFOs?
Ooh, I don't know.
I kind of forget.
It's in the Bible?
I kind of forget which one it was. Yeah, it's a chapter and stuff in the Bible. There's
a chapter in the Bible that
And
I tell you what, next time you call in, you better tell us about it, because I want to know more about that. Do you so yeah, there are churches that believe in aliens. Is that what I'm gathering, or do you think that that UFOs are spiritual?
Yeah, it's just something that I figured out in the Bible.
Oh, you figured it out yourself. Okay, yeah, I would love to hear which verses. Is it wheels within wheels? Is it because if it's the wheels within wheels, I got some ideas about that. Because you look at the way the Bible describes angels, for instance. Yeah. Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Yeah, it's okay.
I think there's a little bit of a delay on my end. Sorry, guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was hoping to go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
I was thinking to start a church and welcome most everybody, including good witches and
good witches.
Paranormal people, and I think it'd be cool to have like a kind of like a gift shop or something inside the church that sells ghost hunting equipment and stuff like that.
You have ghost hunting equipment?
Yeah.
What kind of ghost hunting equipment do you have?
Oh, I just have a ghost box.
A ghost box.
Yeah. So I do want to backtrack really quickly, because so you said you believe in the God of the Bible, and you believe in the Bible, and you're super grateful for the family that introduced you and like really got you saved and all this stuff. And you're sort of grappling with your belief in the paranormal, but you also say that the Bible sort of includes the paranormal. And I'm wondering, do you believe in ghosts and the paranormal because you interpreted that to exist in the Bible, or did you believe it in already and then read some verses that made you sort of feel a little bit better about believing in this stuff because it's not, heretical like some Christians have made you think?
I'm actually just got kind of drawn to the paranormal. Nobody got me into it or anything like that. I just sort of picked it up as an interest.
Mm-hmm. And what was there something that happened that made you believe that like ghosts or aliens or what have you exist? I mean, paranormal is a very like broad subject. There could be a million things that, fall under that umbrella that you don't believe in. But did you have like an experience or something that led you to believe in this, or do you just think it's like super cool and fascinating?
I do have experiences. Stuff moves and stuff falls on the floor for no reason. And I've had a lot of pictures where if you've had like a mess on the table of something and something will appear.
It'll appear in the pictures?
Yeah, it'll appear in pictures. And yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that goes on with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I 100% believe that they're spirits. And I actually feel I'm attached to the spirits just as much as they probably are to me. And
yeah, that's a bold claim, I guess. You said, what makes you feel like that the spirits are attached to you?
I don't know. You just have that feeling.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
You just know, and you have that feeling.
Yeah. Well,
the only way I can.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say really quickly. I know we do have some other calls on the line, but before we do go, I think there's something that I do want to bring up with you that you don't have to answer to right now, but just sort of something for you to think about is that, you've said that a lot of this does come down to certain feelings that you have, like, oh, I know that the God of the Bible exists, because, you just have that feeling, it's true. And you also do recognize that you were sort of like grown up in this culture where it's fairly normal for people to believe that the Bible is the word of God and that, it's a true story and what have you. And, I just want you to think about if you were born somewhere else, not in small town Ohio. Say you were, from, somewhere in India, and you grew up in a incredibly, Hindu culture where, there's a lot of really fun festivals and really fun Hindu families who bring you to temple. And do you think that if you were raised in that culture, where, beliefs in Vishnu were super normalized, do you think that you would read something like the Bhagavad Gita and think like, yeah, well, of course, you could just kind of know that this is true? I guess I would challenge you to sort of think about if your preconceived notions are ones that exist because you genuinely believe they are true, or if you genuinely believe that they're true because that's just sort of how you've been raised to believe. So something to think about. And I think you could also apply that to your beliefs in some paranormal things and spirits and stuff. So always good to ask yourself, how do you know that what you believe is true? Okay?
Thank you so much for giving us a call.
You're welcome. I just want to say, can I say something else?
Oh yeah,
My
closing words. Go for it.
My oldest daughter is a witch, and my youngest daughter is a Christian.
I love that. I love that. Regardless of what you believe, I am glad that you are just open and accepting of things that are outside of the norm. And that, you don't think that somebody like your daughter should be burned at the stake. So thank you for that. Thank you for being a pretty cool mom. So I hope you have a good night.
Yeah,
Good night, Laura.
Facebook group really helped me. Oh, okay, sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Thank you.
No, okay. It's been a pleasure. You take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, Laura was certainly friendly.
Yeah.
And it sounds like maybe she might be willing to look at her ideas under a new lens. Maybe she'll call us back and give us those Bible verses she was talking about, but we'll see. We have an awesome super chat from I Got Cookies, $20 to keep the lights on in this place. We need it. Thank you so much. I got all kinds of lights here. They don't come cheap. All right. We have, who do we have next? I think we have William next. Now, William is from Nova Scotia and has a Sasquatch experience. All right. Let's pull him on. I love Sasquatch calls, Genevieve. We had some last time. Hello, William. You are on with Bruce and
Hello, how are you?
We are good.
How are you guys today?
Good.
We are well. So you have a Bigfoot experience?
Perfect. I think there might be a bit of a delay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do actually. I did bump into one of those things briefly back in Alberta. I used to work in the oil and gas industry out there, and you're in a pretty remote area. So, yeah, it was kind of the experience. But what's kind of funny is, kind of just to give you some perspective, I do come from a fairly scientific household. My dad, he's published about 30, 40 papers, on petroleum reservoir dynamics, things like that. My mom's a pharmacist. My twin brother's a reservoir engineer. I have a graduate degree as well. So I really wasn't, how should we put it? I didn't really believe in it too much, if you can say that, because I spend a lot of time out in the woods out here. And, it was one of those things that kind of, the serendipitous nature of the event kind of threw me off guard, because I had spent a fair amount of time, just kind of, I had my twins and I used to put them down, and I ended up watching Monster Quest and just, documentaries, right? And it kind of came down to the fact, oh yeah, no, it's wonderful. I very much enjoy it. But I'd done some research, and some people had they had said some things that made sense, like, how bears step into their footprints. And, some people, one gentleman had looked up, he worked in the Six Rivers National Park, and he tracked, like endangered rodents. And he was like, if, the gentleman was like, look, if I haven't seen any evidence, I don't know. I can't say they're there, right? And, I've spent a lot of time out in the woods and stuff, and I had never seen any evidence of them or anything like that. You'd think, okay, one would run past a trail cam, or we'd have a body or something like that. And when I was working up in northern Alberta and northern British Columbia, we work with a lot of First Nations, and I'd kind of brought it up when I was still curious, and they kind of just brushed me aside and were like, nah, what are you thinking there? We don't know anything about that. And, I'd be riding shotgun back from the frack lease, and you're looking in the snow, and I never saw any evidence or anything like that. So I kind of made my, decision. Okay. Like, this was kind of an interest, something kind of fun to look into, but this doesn't exist. And we had one really warm spring in Calgary, and my in-laws came in, and so we're like, okay, we're going to go to Jasper. So we're driving to Jasper, and it's, it's about 75, 80 degrees out in the beginning of May. And it's beautiful. And just on the way there, we saw, you know, like mountain goats and elk and deer and everything like that. And we saw, I think, 3 or 4 bears just on the way up there. And we stayed there just quickly in the night. And then my father-in-law wanted to get back to Calgary because he had some business to attend to. And I don't know, I just felt really lucky that morning. It was just a very beautiful morning. We had a great time with the kids and everything, and we're driving back. And just on the way there, it was about 9 in the morning. I even bought a lottery ticket, which I never do, which is kind of odd. And as we're driving there, we stop at an area called the Athabasca Lookoff. And
Called the what?
we get there, and there's some garbage. It's called the Athabasca Lookoff. So you look across, basically, it's a river valley. And you see some trees, and then you see a mountain path that goes to British Columbia. And it's about 9 in the morning, and if you can imagine, it's kind of like a half moon shaped piece of asphalt, and then it's basically clear cut and 2 steps down to the tree line. So I kind of wanted to get a photo for Facebook or whatever it was, just like it's because we hadn't had any time to really take photos because my father-in-law was kind of rushing us. And it's kind of strange because like I bumped into this like kind of like British guy who was kind of like a hippie, and his girlfriend, and he just brought it up out of the blue. He's like, "Oh, do you think Bigfoot's here?" And I kind of mocked him. I was like, "Oh yeah, they're here. They're running through the forest all the time here. No big deal type thing." And so I go down, and I'm at the final ledge, and my boy is with me, and he's a pretty tough kid. He's, pretty brave. And all of a sudden, like, I'm just admiring all the wildlife because you could see all these fat little rodents and like bees and the flowers and everything. It was awe-inspiring how intense the wildlife was.
Nice virgin
and
landscape.
So it's insane. Alberta's so lush and vibrant. It's absolutely such a beautiful place. We're very blessed.
You said Athabasca. So I looked it up just to look at what the lake looks like. It's a gorgeous place.
No, it's not the lake. It's southwest of Jasper. It's Athabasca Lookoff. You're looking near Wabasca, though.
Okay.
Athabasca Lookoff is south of Jasper, so it's you'd have to go Google Maps. It's like maybe a 10-minute drive south of Jasper, right? It's right before it kind of hooks to the right. So Athabasca Lookoff. So I'm kind of on the lookoff, and I'm looking west, and I have my phone in my hand, and I'm kind of just like trying to take a photo. And my oldest boy, he kind of gets weirded out, and he's like, "Oh, I want to go see Mom," and he just books it, and he booked it, and I didn't really give it too much more thought. And right a couple of seconds later, maybe 5-10 seconds later, I'm just like, okay, if I move over here, if I try to get this mountain in my view, and I hear kind of like a very loud pop and a snap, like a crack, right? And I look down at my 10 o'clock, and I'm just kind of like, I see this figure, and I just think like, at first, like I thought maybe a bear was standing up, right? Like just quickly, you think these things so quickly. But the first like concrete thought I had was like, what is that big man doing down there? And I had my glasses on. As soon as I focused, I kind of noticed, like, I saw the details of like the deltoid and like kind of like the sunkiness of the eyes and everything like that. And I thought, like, originally I thought it was like the guy had like zipped up one of those skull hoodies, right? Because they had the conical head and it just kind of looked like that. And as soon as I kind of realized what I was looking at, I just kind of panicked, and I turned to my right. So my ex-wife was at she was at my 7 o'clock up top, right? They couldn't see at the tree line, but they could see me. And they're all just kind of, and she was up with a bunch of elderly German tourists, and they were all kind of staring at me, and I'm like, kind of like, yelling her name, like, go, like trying to whisper as loud as I could. And then I kind of like, oh my gosh, I gotta go.
What was the distance?
And get a photo or something. In retrospect, as I was thinking about it today, it was around 100 feet, and it was at my 10 o'clock, and it was down about 30 feet.
Wow, that's pretty close.
Yeah, it was, but it was like you're not expecting to see something like that.
Yeah.
So I turned and yeah, I turned. Yeah, go on.
Oh no, I'll let you finish your story and then we'll ask questions. But
yeah, well, I just turned. I just turned, and all I heard is it was so strange because it was almost similar to what Les Stroud had experienced when he's heard one. It was just that loud, like bang, crash, boom, bang, crash, and just went through the forest.
Something crashing through the woods.
And you could feel you could feel the first footfall, the first couple footfalls. It was weird. It was really strange. And I remember it's funny because I had flip flops on, and I was like trying to like see if I could see, like if I could just see where it taken off to, but I couldn't really, I was stepping on like razor sharp pieces of like spruce tree and pine needles. I was like, damn it. So then I was like, I didn't know what to do because I was terrified, but I grabbed this giant rock and I reefed it as hard as I could. And I reefed it so hard, like I tore muscles in my deltoids, and I still have problems today because of it. And that crow's crashing through the woods and nothing happens. I run back to the car, and my ex-wife's like, get in the car. And the kids are crying, and she's like, what was that? And, I'm like, oh my, there was Bigfoot. And she's like, don't tell me that. And I start going into shock as we're driving. And it's like you popped a bunch of Adderall. It was weird. And I was in almost, how the Terminator vision goes, and you get really focused. Yeah. And I'm just driving, and we're going down the road, and I'm like, I'm starting to get the adrenaline and everything like that. And we see our in-laws, and they're parked at a hostel with some some lawyery types with their mountain equipment co-op gear, and they're staying at a hostel, this little mountain hostel. So they wave us down to get photos and stuff. And I'm like, we just, we're all panicking. The kids are all worked up. And so I get out and I book to the back and I vomit. And then kind of in one motion, I just whooped it up and on the ground. And I start getting the kids out, and they're like, oh, and Zeph and I, they're from Africa. And he's like, come down here. We're going to get photos, And we go down, and I'm panicking because the animal had kind of taken off in that direction, or the person, I should say. And we're standing there, and I'm trying to look normal, and we're getting photos, and these people are asking us how our day was and everything like that. And I'm like, literally, my heart's racing because it's like I'm like thinking this thing's gonna pop out and or it's gonna run across the washout, it's basically, if you can imagine, it's like a big, huge, like glacial river valley, and that goes in the mountains. And then I was just like, oh, I'm freaking out. So we get back in the car, we drive back to Kananaskis, or to Calgary, and we're going through Kananaskis, and my ex-wife is like, William, she's like, did you throw a rock? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, everybody heard whatever was down there, and it scared everyone terribly. She said something along those lines, and she said, and when they saw your face, she says, you really freaked everyone out. She's like, I believe, what you're telling me, but she's like, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to bring it up. If you bring it up in polite company, I'm not going to back you up. She's like, because she's very, like, she should have been born in Victoria, in England, instead of Kenya. And her personality is just she's very tactful, and she's got a lot of poison, Grace, and she's just like, this is not being discussed again. And I was like, okay, whatever. And yeah, that was kind of it. And then I ended up kind of getting really pissed off because my kids were around. So I emailed the Grand Cache Wildlife Department and kind of gave them a piece of my mind, and they just wrote it down. Mm-hmm. And then I was heading up to you guys. It's one of the tar sand sites up there. It's called Cineral Horizon. And just before I left, I got a call from Ottawa, and it was a 613, and I was kind of being debriefed by a guy with the Canadian government about it. And he kind of just basically told me, it's been a playway. He said, just kind of keep your mouth shut. And, it's better not to go off talking about this too much, and you don't want to be one of those nuts comfortable with anyways, right, buddy? And I was like, yeah, you're right, type thing. And he kind of confirmed that there's a lot of them out there, and that they don't really know what's up, and they're kind of elusive and everything like that. We won't dox you about that or come down on you about it. Your secret's safe with us. You want to talk to us about your Bigfoot experience? That's what. Yeah, no, I've spoken about it before. Like, yeah. I kind of opened up about it and stuff like that, and that's why I agreed to I could just go back on Facebook.
Are you ready for some questions?
I'm wondering.
Because we only got a little window of time to ask you some questions about your experience. We'd really like to dig into it now that you've laid it all out. I'll ask my question, and then I'll let Genevieve ask a question too. And my question is, you said it looks like a person wearing one of those skull beanies or having a hood at first. That's what you thought you were looking at.
Well, that's what I assumed, yeah.
When did you, what was it that broke you from assuming that?
When I saw the muscles and the deltoids flex, and then I kind of, and you get when you see these things, it's not so much what you see as much as the feeling you get, and that's kind of what I realized. And it was not a, it's you got to be careful of what your brain tells you. Like, if you're an honest person,
Well, actually, I lied. I'm gonna ask one more question. This was what I actually wanted to ask, and I forgot what it was, so I threw that one out there. You mentioned the hippie gentleman who had mentioned Bigfoot to you prior to this experience.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a possibility that you primed yourself to experience this as a Bigfoot encounter due to that interaction? Do you think there's any chance at all that you primed your brain for that?
I think there was something very serendipitous about that day, and I certainly, given the abundance of wildlife I saw, that can work against that. But as well, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that, I'm a very lucky guy. I don't want to say this without, but I'm able to manifest what I like and want in this world generally. I know it sounds kind of, I don't really, I come from a very scientific kind of family. Like, if you ask me, like, it's like, if people are like, oh, the ocean's filled with all these creatures and blah, blah, blah. And like, we don't know what's in the deep ocean. I'm the type of guy that's like, no, it's an abyssal plain, and there's muck and small crustaceans because there's no light that gets down there. I come from that type of, so that's my perspective on these things.
All right, Genevieve, you want to ask your question?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess it's more of, commentary, but I'm glad that you mentioned the ocean because, you said that what really made you certain that you weren't looking at like a man in a suit or another animal was that feeling that you got. And I've never had a Sasquatch or Bigfoot sighting, but I am a surfer, and I can think about times when I've been in the ocean and my stomach just drops because I think I see something in the water. I feel something against my leg, and for a split second, I am sure that I'm about to get eaten by a shark. And it's so scary. I'm glad that I'm in the ocean because I can piss my pants without it being too weird. But then I look and I realize, it's always been a seal or a log. And granted, I'm talking about something that like for sure does exist. We know that sharks exist. But that feeling that I get, it's, even when I know that it's not true, like I'll usually get out of the water after that just because it takes me a few hours to, get back to normal and feeling okay because that adrenaline. So
you do have to,
yeah. So I know that feeling.
Well, the thing is
about where everybody is freaked out, where it's like you popped a bunch of Adderall and you just can't calm down. But I would just caution against using that as sort of a reason to believe that what you saw was exactly what you did see, because I've had those feelings about sharks and I was actually looking at a seal. So.
Well, no, the thing is, no, I mean, like, I'll be frank with you. I know what I saw. Like, it's 100 feet away and it moved in a bipedal and I could see, it's like, I know what a bear looks like. I worked in the oil industry for 10 years. And so we see grizzlies all the time. We see wolves all the time. You know what you're looking at. You can see when somebody, because one of the things is like, you're not looking at an ape or anything like that. The one thing I do remember, like if in this, the feelings are what you feel. But I was asked because I was on, someone else invited me on for their Spotify program, and they asked me what it looked like, and it looked very nilotic. And I mean, you're looking at you're not looking at like a bear. The bears have snouts. Bears don't have like broad shoulders. Bears don't have cheekbones. Like when I say feeling, like, you know, if you ever look at the rest, like it's the strangest thing ever is you look at the rest, like there used to be a wrestler from Mexico in the WWF in like the late 90s, and his name was like the Giant. And when I describe the feeling, what you're looking at is like, because of that weird grin, it's like that impish grin or whatever it is.
It was grinning.
That's what's well, yeah, it just was strange. Like, because like I thought it was like, we saw it because of the conicalness of the head. You're like, okay, it's got to be because you're trying to figure something out, right? Because it moves in a fluid motion. I thought it was a black dude, like just moving so rhythmically through the and he, like, I thought, like, okay, like the thoughts that go through your head in like such a short period of time are amazing. And it was just like, okay, someone just from like this Calgary Stampeders or like the NBA is out here on vacation, and he zipped a hoodie up, and he's like, and you're like, that's okay, and that's not it. That's not what I'm looking at. Because you're just like, men, they're not 9 feet tall. And just you felt like just when you
what were we using for the scale to get the, what were we using for the scale to get the 9 feet?
Basically what I was looking at, because I was looking at, if you're looking at from 100 feet down, right, and that's a 30%, like I was looking at basically what a balsam fir as well. And generally we're very familiar with those. And like, so you can look at this, they have a very consistent, kind of like the size of basically their evergreen, on them. Right. And so that's basically and I know I'm pretty good with heights and things like that. And again, I was thinking the other day, because I was talking with guys at work here, because they saw one out here in Nova Scotia, which drives me nuts because I didn't think they were here. And like, I was like, okay, I was like, yeah, okay, that's roughly how big this is, the distance, right? And then we found a tree, and then we measured it, and it was over like, and I remember thinking that it just kind of stuck out. That's roughly how big it is, right? Because you look at, you see a big guy, and I'm a fairly big guy, and you just know it's like, okay, this thing's way bigger than me, right? And this the way it moved. And I just remember the deltoid flexing, and I remember it looked like it had a rough.
So
like
did it have
my eyes, right?
You have really short fur then? If you could see the muscles flexing, you would have been able, you'd be able to see.
Yeah, like it had a bluish gray skin, and it had black fur. And I remember, like, if I just kind of if you close your eyes and you're like, okay, every detail is being filled in by my brain, right? And things I may be filling in, the human brain lies to itself. Human beings lie to themselves without them even knowing. People are just like that, right? And if I close my eyes, I'm like, okay, what was I looking at? It's like big black triangle underneath longer, elongated kind of rectangle with long, like, but so it's like the triangle would be the head where it sits on the shoulders, like, you know what I mean? And then it kind of broadens out, right, to another kind of triangle, like upside down triangle that kind of goes to, like, I didn't see its legs or anything, or the bottoms of its legs, and then long arms, right, that bend.
So you saw it from like the waist up then?
Yeah, the waist up. And so if I just distill it down to its like most basic image, it's just like, okay, that's not what it's a hominid.
Were there trees in front of it, or just trees behind it? It was on the tree. It was like walking along the tree line.
There was a clearing, but there was a clearing behind it, right? And you can see it if you just go on Google Maps. It's not hard to see. You can just go on Google View. You can see it's right to the. It's on the. It would be like if you're in the middle. It's not. It would be like maybe a little bit off to the left if you're looking. And there's a clearing of trees. And it's like there's like there's a bunch of trees in front, and then there's a clearing behind it, and then it goes back into the forest. And you could easily see, like, it's not like there was nothing. It was contrasting, beautiful. Like I had no doubt what I was looking at. Like once I focused in on it, and I realized, I was like, okay, like this is a gigantic hominid. Like that's when I panicked, because I had literally, I wasn't prepared. Like, again, like, let me preface this. Like, my dad my father in his spare time looks for asteroid impacts using seismic data. You know, my mom did pharmaceutical research. My sister has a law firm. You know, and like, I'm a pretty successful guy. I taught myself Arabic. Like, I'm a bright guy, and I'm very reasonable. And I had taken this subject up and weighed the evidence and decided, okay, like, I don't believe in this. And I wanted to, but I had come to the conclusion, the preponderance was like, okay, I'm literally, if you go in the areas of Fox Creek, White Court, that whole area, Grand Cache in Alberta, where we're fracking all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
If you go up from, like, if you're looking on Google Maps right now, that's a giant green boreal forest in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, we were in the center of that. I've been through that entire maze constantly. I never saw a single footprint. I never heard anything from anyone bumping into one. And yet they're there. And then when I'm on vacation, when breakups happening, which is when we can't drive on the roads out there because they're so sloppy. During breakup, literally, I'm on vacation, coming home at 9 in the morning. I haven't even eaten my breakfast sandwich. And I'm like staring at one, and I had just like literally mocked a poor guy, and like I literally saw one a minute and 30 seconds later, not even. And that's what I don't get. Like, I don't believe in, like, here's a funny thing. I used to work for a defense contractor. Okay. We used to deal with Lockheed Martin, Raytheon. My job was to interview. This is before I decided I wanted to go swing a hammer and swear and smoke cigarettes in the oil patch, right? I used to work for a defense contractor, and we dealt with ITAR. We dealt with a lot of high-end, like, military-grade stuff, to the point where, like, when the Iran sanctions were on, we had to be very careful, right?
Right.
One day, we used to give out Raspberry Pi and TI-83 development platforms, and one day I get a phone call right before I'm leaving work from a guy who was interested in getting one of them. And he worked for I forget the gentleman's name, but we started talking, and he said, well, okay, I worked for the Hughes AC, right? Hughes Aircraft Company in the 1960s and 70s and 80s and 90s. And I was like, oh, well, that's really cool. And we chit-chat and stuff like that. And he's trying to, like, get me to, I look him up. I went out on LinkedIn, you know, Facebook and all that stuff. And like, okay, this guy works for Hughes AC, right? He was a senior aerospace engineer, the type of people I dealt with.
Yeah.
He called him, he told me, he said, okay, I worked on and if he's listening, he'll know who he is. He said, you know, I worked on the SR-71 program, right? The Blackbird in the 70s. And we were developing, basically, it's an AIM-97 Sparrow for the SR-71. So they did want to put on an air-to-air missile platform on that thing. And he's like, we were working at a Groom Lake. And I was like, oh, okay. Groom Lake.
Trailing off into some different topics here.
However, he had said, the funny thing was, he was like, at the end of the conversation, he was like, you know, I know you kind of want to ask me about the aliens, but basically he said, there's nothing there. And he was being honest. And I had taken that viewpoint and that perspective for everything. So to have one of these massive hominids, and they are big, going through the forest, it is quite shocking. And
I'll tell you what, I personally am where you were before you had your sighting. I'm at that place where, you know, I would love for them to be real. I'd love to explore the world and find out this whole new piece of the ecology of North America. But right now the evidence isn't there. When it comes to ecology, I have a little bit of a conservation background, so I spend a lot of time out in the woods and stuff.
I agree.
Doing surveys and stuff on wildlife, and there are things that we know about the wildlife that we don't have to see the bear to know the bears are there. You know, and it's just there's no evidence for something that fills that niche there. But I am happy to hear that you're willing to be skeptical of your experience, and you've kind of looked at it from some different angles. But yeah, that I'm where you are. If I have my experience and it's compelling to me as yours was to you, that's going to be great. But fortunately, with anecdotal stories, that's how it goes, and that's kind of where it starts and ends.
We're going to catch one of these things. Like there's no point to, like, I mean, and I'm being serious. You can shoot one of these with a 308. I don't get it. Okay, I just don't get it, and
I will flip if we find one. I'll be so happy. All right. Well,
this is one thing kind of I have to say is like you guys. Oh, pardon me, but you guys in the States. I mean, like you know, when they talk about we've got this big wilderness in Washington State, or like
I know you all have
California
some up there.
Okay.
But that's nothing. That's nothing compared to what we have in Canada. It's a joke, right? And I feel bad when people are like, "Oh, I'm in such a remote area," and I'm like, I'm like, no, you're not. Like, you're really not.
Right.
And it's just like,
all right.
I don't get it. But they're everywhere, and I can't say they're not there because I've seen one and I know what I saw, and I don't know how to deal with that because again, like my family's background, and it's just I don't know. It's one of those things it puts egg on your face. And one thing is like I certainly got egg on my face. I'm not as arrogant about what I know and I don't know anymore. And I'll tell you that I'll definitely I'm open to everything now.
All right. Well, you give us some food for thought. Again, I'm where you were before you had your experience, so I'm very skeptical of anecdotal claims. I'm nothing personal against you. This is the most common type of encounter that I run into. They see a humanoid, or a person sees a humanoid figure in the woods for just a brief moment and it's gone. So your distance even is about the average distance that people have these encounters. So you're not alone in this. And I'm not saying that there's not a phenomena that happens out there in the woods that causes this. I just don't know if I'm convinced that it's a hominid. That's where I'm standing now, but we appreciate it.
It is. Trust me, buddy. Thank you very much for your time, but I'll just say this and I'll let you go there. You're probably better off not seeing all these things, man. Honestly, you don't have to. It's better to be, how do I say this? I share your concerns, and if you do bump into one, like, these things can kill you, and you'd never even, no one would ever even know what happened to you. And they're that big and they move really fast. And, I'm a pretty strong-willed, tough guy.
Yeah.
And, I don't like going in the woods no more. I'll leave it at that. But, thank you for your time, guys. And, let's go, Brandon. All right. Take care.
You have a good night. All right. Well, that was a interesting Bigfoot encounter there, Genevieve. I did not expect the "Let's go, Brandon" at the end. That was
Yeah, I find it funny when people in other countries care about American politics.
Right.
But
they, like I was saying, though, that's the most common type of encounter that people experience with a Bigfoot. I don't know why he's saying that no one would know what happened to you, because it sounds like there was his wife and some German tourists up there that would have been pretty well aware of what happened to him if that thing had taken him out.
You'd think so.
Anyway, looks like the side chat got a little spicy tonight. Did you see that, Genevieve?
I did see that.
And we are so lucky because one of our spicy little contributors out there has decided to give us a call. We have, I'm sorry if I mispronounce this. I'm not being facetious or anything about it. Is it Mr. Delasso that we have on the line? Can you hear us? You're on with Genevieve and Bree. Hello.
Thank you very much for the hospitality. How are you guys doing?
Great. How are you doing?
Fine. Yeah. So
I wanted to say, Genevieve, you hurt my feelings.
Oh, I'm sorry. I never intend to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah, you forced my hand. I had to publish the video where you remember you said you were agnostic atheist, and you said you wanted the proof, and then I provided you with the 7-day cycle proof, and you did not respond. I think your friend, Prophet Azad, he was kind of choking, and he terminated the call. He terminated the call because he couldn't respond to my argument. But I didn't hear you address the point that I established. Do you want me to repeat the two propositions and see how you would engage with them?
Yeah. Well, you're on the line now. I'd say go ahead.
Let's
sorry.
do it.
I don't remember where you sent me anything, but I'll definitely look it all up. I'm open. So what do you got for us?
No problem, because I remember I told you I can prove that Jesus is sovereign over all nations by two propositions. Number one, he predicted. He's the author of the 7-day cycle, and number two, he predicted its universal application as a demonstration of his power over all nations by the replacement of the weekly cycles of the nations, which was there to serve as a means to worship their gods. So by that, he has demonstrated power over the nations and the gods of the nations. So ipso facto, showing that he has power over our reality. So it seems to me like you said you're looking for proof. You're agnostic, atheist. Isn't this sufficient enough to demonstrate that Jesus is Lord over you? The fact that you are strictly adhering to what he predicted in Scripture.
I would say that is definitely not sufficient evidence for me personally. Just because we happen to use a calendar that was popular with the Sumerians and the Babylonians doesn't mean that I believe in all their gods either, right? You know, democracy came from the Greeks, and that sort of rules my reality here in the United States in a perfect world.
Our days of the week are Norse gods. Thursday, Thor's day. Wednesday is Odin's day. That's where they get their origins from. So yeah, there's a lot of culture and that gets passed down and built on this. As far as the 7-day cycle, what good is the 7-day cycle? It's just it doesn't seem necessarily that it had to be that way, or that it works especially well with our cycle of the Earth circling the sun, or even the rotation of the Earth as it spins on its axis. It doesn't really seem to line up especially well with any of those other measurements. Why is that?
Okay, if I can quickly interject for a second. First of all, I would like to correct you on the Babylonian claim. The Babylonian kept a lunar cycle, according to the primary Babylonian source called the Enuma Elish tablets. So you can go on the 5th tablet, verses 10 to 31 should establish that. So I'd just like to correct you. The authorship of the 7-day cycle is specifically Hebraic. As far as the name of the days, they're not universal. In China, they don't have those days. In Israel, they don't have those days names. And all Arabic countries, they don't have those names. So basically, it's not universal, unlike the 7-day cycle. So therefore, that point is moot. And finally, as far as the 7-day cycle, it's totally arbitrary. So validating my point. So why are people keeping the 7-day cycle, which went against their cultural and religious habits? So every nation kept a different cycle. Every nation kept a different cycle for the veneration of their gods. So you have to explain to me why the little Hebrews, who predicted the universal application of the 7-day cycle as a demonstration of the power of their God, was able to predict that, and it has been fulfilled, going against the will of all nations.
Constantine, and then colonialism is just that. That's just the answer. That's all there is to it. It's Christianity making its way into Europe via Greece, and really kind of spreading from there. And then the rest of the world, who had their own cycles and their own calendars, were sort of don't want to paint a victim complex or anything, but they were sort of the victim of colonialism. They were oppressed into adapting to this European culture that brought with it the baggage of Christianity that had come over to Greece. What in about the third 300 and I don't know, when was Nicaea? That around that time.
Yeah, it was in the 2nd, 3rd century.
You know what, BrainBug? Okay, go ahead.
I was just gonna push back on you really quickly too, because I started second guessing myself, so I looked it up. And yeah, the 7-day week originates from the Babylonian calendar, which is in turn based on the Sumerian calendar. And the 7 days does correspond to the time it takes for the moon to transition between each phase, which is 29.53 days. And so they would insert a day or two in the final week of the month.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's
so Assyria, that's Semitic too. Those were Semitic people. This was part of this calendar comes down from their culture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, just to interject a little, and then I'll let you guys go. Genevieve, you're gonna have to do more than just Google searches, because I just gave you the primary source, and every scholar would tell you that it was not a recurrent 7-day cycle, because you're right, it's 29.5 days, which does not divide by 7.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why the last week ended in 8 or 9 days. So that's not a recurrent 7-day cycle. Therefore, it's not the 7-day cycle. Therefore, my first proposition is still valid. The 7-day cycle is exclusive to the Hebrews, not the Babylonians. It was a lunar. Go ahead.
I would just say that once again, it really has no impact on whether or not I believe that Jesus is.
I agree. I understand.
Because, like I said, once again, we live in a democratic nation. Democracy comes from ancient Greece, but we don't also that's not just because it influences our life in this big way doesn't mean that I believe that Zeus is our real Lord and Savior or anything like that.
I do understand.
So I wouldn't hang your hat on this because it's super unconvincing. I'm really sorry.
Hey, can I ask a quick question?
I understand, Genevieve. Wait. One thing. I do understand, but I just would like to make clear to you that your example is not analogous, because democracy is not universal. The 7-day cycle is. So I just would like you to consider that. I don't want to push back too much, but consider that your example is totally not analogous to what I presented. That's first of all. Second of all, BrainBug, you made an argument. I wanted to respond to your last argument. What was your last argument before Genevieve came with this democracy thing, which was not predicted, which doesn't refer to a God, as my example does. My God said he would submit all nations to a 7-day cycle, demonstrating power, the law, cause, and effect. You don't need to see gravity for you to accept the reality that things will fall. Likewise, the law, cause, and effect, by the law, cause, and effect, my God said he would submit all nations, and he did it. So by that alone, I have proven God. But what was your last argument?
What I was talking about was Greek
Rome,
Greek adoption, and then and then Constantine, and then followed by colonialism.
Okay, great point. At least you're engaging with the point, because you understand the impact of my argument. So you need to come with human agency. You need to come with human agency in order to argue against my point. But the problem with that is the 7-day cycle predates Rome, number one. Number two, the 7-day cycle was adopted by Rome, the Julian calendar, before it became so-called Christianity. And thirdly, most countries adopted the 7-day cycle before colonization.
Okay. If I say a word, you tell me if you know what I'm talking about. Utnapishtim.
Go ahead.
Utnapishtim.
Uh-huh.
Do you know who Utnapishtim is?
Who?
Utnapishtim. Oh, yeah. Do you know who that is? You know Noah, right? You know Noah from Noah's Ark. The guy.
Noah's Ark?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I'm not quite hearing you. Can you speak a little louder, please?
I said you know Noah from Noah's Ark, right? So there's a mythology that's really old. This is where the 7-day week comes from, where it originally comes from, because it was part of their cycle of their kind of their creation myth, because it was part of the story of the culture at that time. Marduk, the king god, which was the king god of all the Semitic people for a long time. I'm sure you've heard it from the Bible, Marduk. I would think so. Anyway, he was a very high up in the hierarchy of the deities of the ancient Near East, of the Assyrian people, of all these Semitic cultures. They all had their own god, and he was kind of the top dog of it. Yahweh was there too, the god of the Bible, but Marduk was the one in this story, in the original story, the oldest version of this mythology that we have stone tablets of in cuneiform written. And he flooded the world, and he saved Utnapishtim, which is who became Noah in the later Old Testament retellings of this mythology, as it passed along through these different cultures. So they're all interconnected, but the 7-day cycle comes from that flood myth. I believe it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it rained for 7 days and it flooded the world.
Yeah, if you read the I was just going to add on.
Let Genevieve add on real quick. I don't want to have to mute, but let her finish what she was saying, and then you can respond.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to encourage you to go ahead and read that, because that is from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the oldest book that we do have, and it's so interesting because it follows the story of Gilgamesh, and he wants to find the secret of eternal life, and so he goes to see Utnapishtim, who tells him all about this crazy thing that happened where all the gods of the pantheon were really pissed at humanity, and so they decided to flood the world and start anew. And one of the gods in that pantheon was like, hey man, that's kind of messed up. I'm going to go tell this guy, being Utnapishtim. And so he built an ark and filled it with seeds and his family and some animals, and then sent out some birds to see if they're, if it was safe to land, and
doves and ravens.
Exactly, day after day. And then when the dog,
I'm familiar with that. I'm familiar with the story.
So that's.
I'm familiar with the story, but here's the problem. If I can just push back a little, I'm sorry.
Okay.
First of all, the Epic of Gilgamesh makes no mention of a 7-day cycle. It talks about a 7-day festival, but not a 7-day cycle. And again, it was a lunar cycle. The Assyrians, the Sumerians all kept a lunar cycle. Last week ended in 8 or 9 days, which means it's not recurrent, therefore it's not a cycle. That's number one. Number two, the story of Noah, the difference between our story, which shows it originated with the Hebrews, as opposed to every other story of a flood, is that we give an explanation, a valid explanation of how the flood took place. We have an explanation saying the waters came from the deep. And we know that the earth has more water in the deep than it has in the whole earth.
What do you mean by
oceans?
The deep?
So, you can Google search the science. This is something in the last 10 years. So you can edify yourself by verifying that there's more water in the deep than there is in all the oceans. So we have a story, a narrative that says the water came from the deep. So we have an explanation as opposed to saying it came from the mouth of a fish or some weird ass story. So that's if you're appealing to the Epic of Gilgamesh with a weird ass story, as opposed to the epic of the story of Noah, which gives a valid way how the earth could be flooded.
So something that's really interesting. So I would encourage you to slow down and humble yourself and really think about this, because they have done the math and the studies to say, okay, how much water would this actually take to cause a worldwide flood? And it's more water that exists whatsoever, even if you included the oceans plus whatever you have, underground in various basins. It's physically impossible. Like, it's legitimately physically impossible. So I wouldn't go ahead and say like, oh, the story in the Epic of Gilgamesh is just absurd because those gods said this, but our God said that it came from the deep, and that could be true.
Well, science refutes you. The latest research refutes what you just said.
That's not true, though.
It flooded the earth multiple times.
That's not true, though. There's
everybody who's listening can verify this.
There is not more water under the ground than there is in all the oceans. I'm sorry, that's wrong. That's not no science has ever.
There's at least 10 articles.
Okay.
There's at least 10 scientific articles that you can find.
I have to ask you, what research organizations and scientists are you getting this from? Because this is kind of sounding like something I might read in the ICR, but I can guarantee you that every single geologist would tell you that there has never been a worldwide flood because it is literally physically impossible.
I never said they said that. I never said they claimed that there was a worldwide flood. I said they claim, every science magazine and every reputed scientists say that there's enough water in the deep to overflood the earth multiple times. This is something that a quick Google search will validate my position. The more you're speaking is the more you're showing that you're wrong.
I'm sorry.
This is something that's easily
I thought you
verified.
said that. I thought you said that we need to do more than just a quick Google search to understand something when we were talking about the calendars. But I would just encourage you to really
There's 10 magazines.
Oh,
There's
cool.
10 scientist magazines.
Okay, cool. Magazines. Cool. Yeah, for sure.
So, what magazine? What article are you talking about?
Well, do you want me to do a Google search for you? Google search, and you're going to see. Give me one scientist that says no.
Google search is not an answer for me. You tell me, because you're talking about scientific research that's being done that says that there's more water under the ground than there is in all the oceans, and I'm just telling you that's not that would overturn our understanding of geology as a whole, as the nature of the construction of a planet. That would overturn all of that. It would be front page news. All geology would be talking about it, and we'd have to restructure how we understand how everything works geologically based on there being more water underneath the earth or underneath the earth's crust than there is in the oceans. That would not be something that would just be like, oh, it's in the back issue of a science magazine. No, it would be huge. It would turn over paradigms.
So I do think I see.
Well, Washington Post,
Washington
Post, NewScientist.com, Quantum Magazine,
Hey,
Discover Magazine, TheAtlantic.com, Discover.com, TheGuardian.com.
Hey, buddy. So once again, I'm sorry to interrupt, BrainBug, but I did do the Google search that we talked about, and I can see where your confusion comes from, because
Go ahead.
98% of the Earth's available fresh water is underground. So a vast majority of our fresh water is underground.
Right.
But 96.5% of all of the water in the world is salt water in the oceans.
Right.
So that's why underground water makes up almost 100% of the fresh water that exists, but that in and of itself is 4% of all of the water that exists in the world. So once again, if you were to add that to the oceans to cause this flood, that would literally be a drop in the bucket. But I can see why you did get confused on that, because there is a big difference between fresh water and salt water.
A very small percentage of the water on the
I'm reading the article. It's not even making any distinction between fresh water or spring water. It's just saying there's more water. No specification, says more water than all the oceans combined in the deep of the earth. I don't see where you're specifying. Can you quote the article that you're referring me to? Because I don't see this. Life Science is not saying that. Where are you reading this distinction between fresh water and salt water? Where are you seeing this?
Let me see. What is the NGWA? It's the National Groundwater Association.
Okay. And can you quote it for me? Can you read the part where it says it's fresh water as opposed to?
I just see that 98% of Earth's available fresh water is groundwater. It's about 60 times as plentiful as the fresh water found in lakes and streams. And then when I look at the USGS website, about 71% of the Earth's surface is water covered, and the oceans hold about 96.5% of all Earth's water. But once again, just discounting all the water, discounting whatever water's underground or in the oceans, it doesn't change the fact that it seems that your justification for believing the biblical 40-day flood in the Bible and not the 40-day flood in the Epic of Gilgamesh is kind of irrelevant. I just like the 7-day calendar, I don't think where the water is in the world is something you should hang your hat on, because it's just not sufficient
No.
Of anything.
I never made my argument. I never made my argument based on the Noah's flood. My argument was always on the 7-day cycle. I just brought that to your attention because you're coming with stories that make no account on how the world could be flooded with water. I gave you multiple articles that says I don't see no distinction between fresh or salt water, but it says there's more water in the earth, in the crust of the earth, than all the oceans on the earth. So if you're telling me that a flood coming from if it would happen, that all the water in the depth of the earth would come up, it would not flood the earth. That is quite no problem. We'll let your audience take what they can take from that. The fact still remains is that you're submitted to a 7-day cycle. You went to the Assyrians, lunar cycle. You went to the Babylonians, lunar cycle. You went to the Sumerians, lunar cycle, and none of them predicted the universal application of the 7-day cycle like God did. So even if I would accept this fallacy, it still does not account for my second proposition, which demonstrates power over you. You're submitted to the will of God. I can leave it there. Genevieve, I appreciate your hospitality. You hurt my feelings. I did publish the video where your expression and the expression of a prophet of God was quite interesting.
Well, send it to me again. Wherever you sent it, I'll try.
I didn't send it. No. It's on my channel. I didn't send it to you. I never sent it to you. But
yeah, sorry.
My people watch it.
I don't go on YouTube unless I'm watching or unless I'm actually doing these shows. So I'm sorry. I will look for your YouTube channel and check it out because this should be very interesting. But I would always ask
it's on your
yourself.
channel.
I would always just ask yourself, how do I know that what I believe is true? It's just good.
7-day cycle.
Good.
I'm always gonna serve you with the same delicious. It's the 7-day cycle.
Well, I still don't even understand what's so significant about the 7-day cycle. It's just what the colonizers forced everybody to switch to because it matched their system, and now we use it universally for shipping and international travel.
Japan adopted the 7-day cycle before colonization in the 8th century, and Iran and Ethiopia does not use the Gregorian calendar. Therefore, it cannot account for why the 7-day cycle is universal. If you're going to say human agency through Rome and colonization, you have to explain to me why Iran and Ethiopia, which were not colonized or adopt, which
because the adjacency. Okay, if all the world is using, listen. If all the world is switched to this calendar system and they're all doing their shipping and traveling based on this calendar system, the neighboring countries benefit from doing that. That's why we use universal temperatures and measurements. It was only Hebrews. That's why we use the metric system.
It was not popular.
What do you mean?
It was not popular. It was only the Hebrews. And it goes against
they brought it to Greece,
cultural,
and then the Greeks took that up as their calendar, and then the Greeks took that up as their calendar and spread to Rome, and then Rome conquered the world, and then
Iran, and Ethiopia does not adhere to the Gregorian calendar. Again, you're providing false information.
What difference does that make? Whether they adhere to the Gregorian calendar? What difference does it make, though? What difference does that make at all? Because they're still adhering to the 7-day cycle to interact with the civilizations around them. They're still adhering to that because of the trade and because of cultural influence.
The 7-day cycle, there was trade way before the 7-day cycle, my friend. Right. Your argument makes no sense. There was trade between nations before the 7-day cycle, and every nation, you're telling me every nation relinquished their cultural and religious aspirations or habits. They built temples for this, they built pyramids for this, and they left all of that just for trade. While there was already trade happening in the world with the powerful
empires, right? Yes, exactly. You got it. You figured it out. Excellent.
Well, I don't know what that means, but I appreciate your time. Thank you very much, Genevieve. Consider what I said, because you said you're a Gnostic atheist. Come on now, be serious with yourself.
I'm serious. I'm very serious, dude. We just have very different ideas of what sufficient evidence is. But thank you so much
remember,
for calling.
How many times? Okay. Remember how many times you guys pushed back, but I had an answer for everything you guys provided. Thank you, guys.
I wonder if God is really butthurt that we named these magic 7 days after other gods.
Right.
Awkward.
I think that would be that'd be upsetting. Hey, Ethan.
So how'd you like your experience with 7-day cycle guy?
That's great. That's a hoot.
Wow.
So, Genevieve, what do you have coming up?
Oh gosh. Well, I do have my own show that I do every Monday nights, produced by the lovely Ethan Micheal, called That GD Show, that I co-host with Dave. We're doing that every Monday. It's a lot of fun. You should come watch it. And other than that, I'm just filling in here and there, doing these fun guest spots whenever I can. I was on Monday's episode of Talk Heathen with the ACA, which was super fun. So yeah, that's what I got going on. You can follow me on TikTok. That's really fun too. It's just Genevieve's TikTok. I'm very boring. But yeah, that's me. What about you, BrainBug?
Ethan doesn't realize he has himself muted.
Oh no.
Whoops. That's actually how Dave found you, was because of TikTok, right?
Yeah, he did. It was like 2 weeks after my first TikTok. I think I had maybe like 40 followers, and he was like, "Hey, I like you. Let's do a show together." I was like, "No way."
I'm glad he found you, because it brought you over here to hang out with me.
I know, it's been so fun.
I have my Saturday show, 9:30 a.m. live from the Hive. We this week we are going to be this coming week we are going to be doing Brian Holdsworth, the Catholic apologist. We're going to be responding to some of his climate arguments. and we are going to continue our journey through cryptids of TikTok. So we'll see what's up next for that. So see y'all Saturday.
Awesome. Well, Ameet, thank you for the $10 super chat. I can never find Lincoln
lycanthropes, but I guess that's why they're called werewolves.
Werewolves.
I saw that in the chat, and I wanted to say how much I appreciated the joke, but I didn't want to interrupt the calls. But amazing.
And we got another one from Tiffany too. You didn't miss that one, did you? There we go. Because
someone said I have to pay to work here. Thank you, Tiffany. Also, thank our top tier patrons. Shit, I don't have the sheet up. Dude, I did that again last week. I totally forgot to have the sheet up.
PLAZA. I know Cindy Plaza's on there. Richard Gilliver's on there. Ameet, Mathew.
PLAZA, Left, Right, Left, Ryan Hammond, Kenneth Leonard, Skye, Secular Rarity, Philip Leitch, Richard Gilliver, _Atheism, Ameet, Mathew, Ray Sylvester, and Gerudo Sand. Thank you so much for your patronage. There is not going to be an after show tonight. Sorry, folks. So for those who don't know, I had to put my little baby to sleep, Band-Aid, so you will not see him around anymore. So I would like to close out the show with a tribute to him. We'll be back on the pickup line with Hannah Vaughn this Thursday at 9 p.m. Central to discuss STDs with SDB. Good night, everyone. Band-Aid. Hi. This is how Band-Aid likes to be held. Say hi. Say hi. you